This winter season, I decided to give myself a self-imposed sort of Christmas challenge, trying to cover 12 rom-coms before Christmas. Did I complete it in time for Christmas? No. Did I also get a lot farther than I thought potentially I might have got? Yeah, considering the fact that it took me several months to try to make a movie in time for Halloween and it still came out November 1st. Yeah. I've made 8 videos so far. Was one of them late? Yes. Is this one late? Yes. But still, you know what? It's fine. Initially, my plan was that if I went over, I would still keep making them this season. Kind of like a who cares, it's still the holiday season sort of thing. But as I still have 4 movies left to do, and a couple of them are classics, and a couple of them are maybe not so classic, I wanted to give myself the proper time devoted to those films, because I know that if I try to do them right now, I'm gonna rush it because I'm gonna feel like every day past Christmas is a day that I am like losing this challenge or piling on a challenge that I already lost for myself. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save those 4 movies for the Christmas season of 2020 and release one a week or something like that in December. However, to kind of culminate this season and to like a temporary end on that for now, I wanted to share something that my best friend, Caitlin, you might remember her as the sponsor for my 3rd video, she sent me a Christmas gift that I think that any viewers of my videos so far might enjoy. And it is the Build Your Own Christmas Movie Romance book, written by Rhiannon Conk. So basically it says, pick your plot, meet your man, and create the holiday love story of a lifetime. Now, I'm still a noob when it comes to this YouTube thing, so I'm not entirely sure how much of this I can read or say before things like copyright come into play. But on top of that, this is also something that, like, I don't want to take away any of the potential revenue that Rhiannon could be making from this either. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because that would be crazy. I didn't get permission to do that. And, you know, if you're into this, I want you to go get it yourself. And, you know, because it's a choose your own adventure, I feel like there are multiple options that could happen. But I thought we could start it together and kind of celebrate the rom-coms that we've been talking about this whole time, and maybe experience a little bit what it's like to be in your own Christmas movie rom-com. Let me read that back for you. What if every cheesy Christmas rom-com ever made was combined into one wonderfully over-the-top story, and you controlled the plot? Chrissy is just your normal big city career gal who hates Christmas. When her candy cane farming mom calls her about Christmas dinner, you must choose what Chrissy does. You decide, should she lie or admit she's going skiing instead? Which generic hunk should Chrissy end up with? And could he secretly be a prince? Is that guy Santa or just a bearded man who's too nosy? Which happily ever after will Chrissy choose? Let's find out. Scene 1. Meet the heroine. Has that adorable, like, Christmas sweater vibe. That knit point stitch. I don't know what this stuff's called. I'm sorry, I'm not handy in that way. That's none of your business. Chrissy slammed her business phone down on her business desk and sighed. She looked around. Her entire desk was covered with business binders, business books, including the classic How to Business Your Way to the Top of Business, and business supplies. One thing was for sure, she was a business lady. The phone rang again. She picked it up, shouted, "Business!" and slammed it back down. She simply had too much business to do to deal with all of this. Chrissy pulled a hand mirror out of her desk drawer and examined herself. She was dressed the way she did every day. Dark blazer, skirt, and extremely sensible heels. In fact, when she bought them, Chrissy had asked the shoe salesman to bring her the heel equivalent of the woman at the bar who takes her friend's keys and is always reminding them to keep drinking water. That's how sensible they were. To complete her outfit, she wore her hair pulled back into a smart ponytail. Not like a ponytail you'd wear for sports, but the kind of smooth business ponytail that business ladies can pull off. In short, the perfect outfit for doing business. She checked her makeup in the mirror. Minimal, not so distracting that it would get in the way of business. Every eyelash in place. She took a deep breath. Today was going to be the day. Chrissy had started at Big Business Company 10 years ago as an intern, and now after years of thankless work, filing, sorting, synergizing, circling back on that email, it was finally happening. She was going to be promoted to junior executive in charge of business. "I'm not a business, ma'am," she whispered to her reflection in the mirror. "I'm a business, ma'am." It was what she always told herself when she needed to get pumped up. Her phone rang again and she grabbed it in frustration. "Eve, I told you to hold all my calls," she snapped at her assistant through the line. "Sorry," Eve whispered, "but it's your mom, so I thought you might want to make an exception." Chrissy sighed. Should Chrissy take the call or ignore the call and start fantasizing about her upcoming ski vacation? I'm going to say she should take the call because I'm a nice person. I'm sorry. Chrissy knew what this was about. With a final groan, she said, "I'll take it on line 1. "Honey!" exclaimed her mother moments later. "It's so good to hear your voice." "Hi, Mom," said Chrissy, bracing herself. "How's work?" her mother asked. "Busy with business, as usual," said Chrissy. "Look, honey, I know you're busy, so I'll make this quick. I'm just finalizing all my meal prep for our big Christmas dinner, and I just wanted to confirm that you and Cole will be there with bells on." Should Chrissy agree to attend the Christmas dinner, or tell her mom she won't be able to make it? I'm going to say agree in this case. "Sure, Mom," Chrissy responded breezily. "Of course we'll be there." Her mind was racing. They would not be there. She and Cole had already agreed that they would not be attending this year's family Christmas dinner. They were planning on going skiing in the Swiss Alps. Plus, how had Cole put it? Oh, right. He'd said, "Family dinners? That sounds like something only lower middle class people would do." Then he slicked his hair back with one hand, caught his reflection in his storefront window, and flexed his biceps for all the street to see. "Wow," he whispered to himself. "I'm rich and smart and have good muscles." Chrissy felt a pang, then something deep inside that said, "Maybe this isn't the world's best man." But she pushed that feeling away. She adored Cole. So what if he called puppies plus-size rats? He was handsome and successful and exactly who a businesswoman like her belonged with. And plus, she remembered, his comforter was custom-made out of $100 bills. And she mostly felt like this was a good thing, right? Maybe best not to think about it. "Oh, I'm so glad," Chrissy's mother cried, interrupting Chrissy's thoughts. "I hadn't heard from you in a while, and I was beginning to wonder if you'd be able to make it at all." "Of course we're coming," Chrissy said. Why'd she keep saying that? Cole was going to kill her. Maybe, she thought, maybe there was a way to reschedule the flights and the reservations so that they could swing by Candy Cane Falls before leaving. They should have thought this through earlier. The annual dinner at her mom's house was not a surprise. It was, annual. Why did they schedule a trip to fall exactly on Christmas? Suddenly, Chrissy had a flashback, a hazy memory of herself saying to Cole, "Schedule it on Christmas so we miss all the festivities this year. Because I don't know if I've told you," she had continued, "but I hate Christmas." Cole had nodded. "I know. It's literally your Tinder bio," he reminded her. "And you say it in your sleep. And you yell it when you're surprised. And it's your password to everything." "Not everything," Chrissy exclaimed. "My bank account password is I hate Christmas 123 exclamation point, because I need to use numbers and a special character." Then Cole had leaned in, cautiously. "Do you mind me asking," he had said, "why do you hate Christmas so much?" Chrissy slapped him across the face. Her eyes went dark like a Christmas bulb that had also gone dark. "You know I don't talk about that," she hissed. "It's my mysterious secret. It gives me depth." And there will be 3 types of potato casserole, her mom was saying. Chrissy snapped back to the phone conversation. And your aunt is bringing green beans casserole, her special recipe, with extra starbursts. And let's see, Tom from the shoe repair shop is bringing turkey casserole, and I think Susan from the PTA is bringing bread casserole, and Gladys from next door has volunteered to make a wine casserole, so I think you're really going to like it. I can't wait, Chrissy said weakly. I'm relieved, her mother said. You know I don't like to ask for help, but the candy cane harvest was huge this year, which is great news for the bottom line, but bad news for my aching back. Chrissy's parents had been lifelong candy cane harvesters. When her dad died 10 years ago, her mom had kept the business going on her own. If you're from a big city, you may not understand what that means. You probably think that candy canes arrive wrapped in plastic, ready for your minty enjoyment. Well, the secret that small-town folks know is that there's actually quite a bit that happens before that delicious striped treat arrives in your big city penthouse. And that's where candy cane harvesters come in. The way it works is, something gets planted in the ground. Chrissy wasn't sure. And then some kind of farming was done to it. Chrissy never paid attention. And then, after some amount of time, Chrissy never listened when her parents explained, they were ready to not be in the ground anymore. Chrissy didn't know how. At the bigger industrial candy cane farms, there were machines that would harvest the candy canes, bushel after bushel. But Chrissy's parents' farm was a small operation, and they had always preferred to do the work themselves. They always said you could tell the difference when a candy cane was hand-picked. And I hate to impose, her mother continued, but even for a couple of days, I'm sure it would be nice to have a few extra hands around here to bring the harvest in. Chrissy tried to imagine Cole picking candy canes out of the ground. She couldn't do it. It was as absurd as imagining him at a Brooks Brothers outlet store. I can definitely see Cole pulling candy canes out of the ground, Chrissy said. They chatted for a few more minutes, and then Chrissy and her mother said their goodbyes. Chrissy hung up the phone and opened up her work laptop to shoot off a quick email to Cole. Told my mom we'd be coming home for Christmas. Oops. Don't have the heart to tell her we'll be skiing instead. She was so excited that you were finally going to be able to make it. Couldn't bum her out. Do you want to tell her? Ha 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 ha, just kidding, but also maybe you should tell her. Kidding, unless you want to. Talk later. She hit send. Then a minute later, a sinking realization came over her as she slowly pulled up her sent messages folder. And there it was at the top, that she had typed it for Cole, but she hadn't actually sent it to Cole. She could see now with horror. She had accidentally sent it to the next email in her address book. Chrissy's best mom in the world 123@hotmail.com. She started scrambling, looking for a way to unsend the message when her mother's response email arrived. I'm sorry you feel like you can't tell me these things, but I understand that you and Cole have your own plans too. Chrissy sighed in relief, then kept reading. And seeing as the sport of downhill skiing carried you for 9 months, gave birth to you and raised you, I understand why you might decide to spend Christmas with it instead of your mother. Love, Mom. Not skiing. Chrissy groaned. She would have to call her mother later to apologize and explain, but right now she just had too much on her mind. Talking with her mom about Cole reminded her. She had dinner plans with him that evening. They were celebrating their 2-year dating anniversary, which, Chrissy reminded her, was basically 10 business years. Cole had been acting strange lately, so when he asked if he could meet her for dinner at their favorite restaurant later that night, at once she had realized. He was going to propose! All of those late nights, those secretive whispers, the volatile moods. Suddenly it all made sense. He had been ring shopping late at night and stressed about making the proposal perfect. It was so Cole, almost as Cole as changing the password on his phone and laptop so she couldn't access them anymore. Probably because they were full of pictures of the ring. Tonight, it was really happening. She almost squealed in delight just thinking about it. I'm going to skip ahead now, not because it isn't hilarious, but again, to avoid reading too much. There's some, fun little tidbits you could enjoy if you have this book. Again, not sponsored. I don't know this person. But you know what? It's her hilarious hard work. So we're going to skip ahead to chapter 3, or scene 3, which we all know is the all-important meet cute. As the skiing trip is for some reason canceled, she ends up going home after all. The sign on the side of the road said, "Welcome to Candy Cane Falls," and Chrissy's Uber driver slowed as he drove past to admire it. Decked out in an explosion of blinking lights, it was festive, but still, it was nothing compared to the town itself. The driver whistled as he pulled onto the main street, staring out the window at the winter wonderland that was Candy Cane Falls in December. Candy Cane Falls may be a small town, Chrissy said robotically, repeating something she'd heard 100 times over from her mother. But there's nothing small about the way we do Christmas. The car screeched to a halt to let 3 reindeer pass. The driver looked back at Chrissy in shock. "It's just a small town thing," said Chrissy. "Small towns, as I understand them, are just full of reindeer." The Uber driver studied his phone. He frowned. "The GPS isn't finding me. Is there no service out here?" Chrissy laughed. "Well," she said, "Candy Cane Falls is an old-fashioned place. I remember a few years ago they tried to update the technological infrastructure, but everyone was so upset and there were so many protests that they finally had to scrap the project. And to think," she said, shaking her head, "of all the good those cans strung between windows could have done for the people of this town. But I guess they just weren't ready." "Any chance you can direct me to your house?" he asked. "Sure," said Chrissy, and then she paused. Should Chrissy take him straight to her house, or take him on a tour through the town first? I kind of want to do the tour, so let's do that. "Actually," Chrissy said, "let's take the long way. I want to show you Candy Cane Falls." "I thought on the drive down you said you hated Candy Cane Falls," her driver said. "That it was a podunk holiday mess that didn't even have one functioning stock exchange. And then you said, 'By the way, I hate Christmas,' and gazed out the window all mysteriously and wouldn't talk for the next hour." "No, you don't understand," said Chrissy. "I want to show you Candy Cane Falls sarcastically, so that I can at least know that some other sane person from the outside can see what a ridiculous, worthless place this is, and how few tourists there are to shove past on the sidewalks." Chrissy sighed. She loved shoving past tourists on the sidewalks. In fact, she could go for a good sidewalk shove right now. Maybe someone wearing a fanny pack. But of course, this was Candy Cane Falls, and there were no tourists to be found. "Now this," Chrissy said, pointing out her window towards a small building decorated to look like a gingerbread house, "is City Hall." She leaned out the window, seeming to be searching for something. "Ah, there he is," she said. "Just right over there is our mayor." Her driver craned his neck to see. "You mean that short guy standing behind that moose?" "No," said Chrissy. "You mean that woman in the power suit trying to walk in front of that moose?" he asked. "Not her," said Chrissy. "You mean that old guy who doesn't seem to realize he's about to walk into that moose?" he asked. "Not him," said Chrissy. There were several seconds of silence in that car. "It's the moose," he said finally, quietly. "It's the moose," Chrissy repeated. "He has been mayor for something like 6 terms so far, but you have to remember, that's in moose years. Actually, that makes it worse. Keep driving." "This is the main drag," Chrissy said when they pulled downtown minutes later. "Let's see, we've got a hot chocolate shop, and a Christmas cookie shop, and a muffin shop, and a high-end candy shop, and a shop of furs and robes and tiaras, just in case someone in town ever falls in love with a mysterious stranger, and he turns out to be a royal, and she needs to quickly look the part because his mother, the queen, is arriving today, and she must make a good impression, and the future of Galdovia depends on it." "You might also be surprised to find out that we have a small technical school here," Chrissy confirmed. "You can learn useful trades like reindeer shoeing or snow shoeing or shooing away anyone that says they don't love Christmas, but that last one is more of a certificate program." She pointed out the other window. "And over there is the Contests warehouse. It's the perfect place to go if you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you need to win some sort of baking contest to save your parents' farm, or to raise money for a sick child, or to prove to yourself that even though you're a widower, you can at least still, I don't know, bake a cookie or something. Basically, they have anything you might need there. Any aprons or cooking supplies or trophies or pre-written motivational speeches you can give to yourself in the mirror before the big day. The day that you win the farm back and finally earn Dad's respect. Although, of course, he'll tell you that he always respected you. He just didn't know how to show it. "Aw, Dad," you'll say, patting him on the shoulder, realizing you don't know what to say, but then your goofy younger brother will run into the kitchen, chuck a Christmas cookie at Dad's face, and yell, "Food fight!" And you'll both look at each other like, "Are we doing this?" And then you'll both shrug like, "I guess we're doing this." And you'll both laugh and scoop up your own Christmas treats and hurl them at each other long into the night. This will somehow make up for a childhood devoid of paternal affection, and next year, guess who the judge of the cookie contest is? That's right, dear old Dad. Our driver opened his mouth once or twice, but no words came out. "Basically, I'm saying you could get that stuff there," Chrissy explained. "Anyway, that's just the whole downtown. Now here on the way out," she said, pointing out the window, "is Lonely Chris. He's always just kind of sadly walking around outside the shops like he's just begging someone to ask if he's okay." "Have you ever thought to ask?" the driver asked. Then he peered out the window. "Wait, are you talking about that big guy in the red sweatshirt with the white piping?" he asked. "Yep," said Chrissy. "That man with the big white beard and the black boots?" he asked. "That's Chris," she said brightly. "Carrying that huge burlap sack?" he asked. Chrissy said impatiently, "You got it. That's Chris. I only point him out to you because if you ever run into him, you might get that vague sensation that if you only stop to talk to him and to treat him like a human being, great mysteries and secrets might be revealed unto you, and you might learn a valuable lesson about outward appearances and inward beauty. But you should ignore that feeling because, like I made out a point to say, it's just lonely, friendless Chris, and you needn't worry about him. What do you think will happen if you do? You think you're going to learn some kind of important lesson about the inherent value that exists in every person, no matter what difficult circumstances they find themselves in?" "What does his burlap sack say?" the driver asked, squinting. "Good boys and girls see beyond the surface?" "I can't imagine that it has any important meaning or that it's relevant in figuring out Chris and his whole deal," Chrissy said. "Things are always exactly as they seem." Should Chrissy pull over or keep going to her mom's house? Oh boy. I'm gonna be a little evil and say keep going to her mom's house. I know, I'm terrible. We already know everything we need to know about this guy. Comfy red and white clothing, black boots, white hair and beard, named Chris with a K. Classic, regular, human, non-magical guy. I see nothing interesting coming out of our pulling over, and I absolutely refuse to believe that there may be any symbolism here, or that Chris is somehow the human embodiment of a lesson I needed to learn for many, many years. I refuse to acknowledge the clues, which to an outsider may seem obvious, because I'm angry, and I'm from the city, and I'm going through business withdrawal. I haven't collated anything for a week, and honestly, I can't remember the last time I said per my last email, so you'll excuse me if I'm a little out of sorts. Now, for the last time, she concluded, please, just drive me home. The car snaked through curvy back roads until it finally settled on a property just on the outskirts of town. Chrissy's childhood home. When she was younger, they'd lived in a small apartment closer to the center of town. At the time, they were growing candy canes on windowsills on their balcony in the small patch of grass in front of the building, wherever they could find. The peppermint business was brutal, and the candy cane sector was the most competitive of all. If Chrissy's family was ever going to build a sustainable business, they knew they were going to have to grind. So the small two-bedroom apartment had been overwhelmed by candy canes, tucked into corners and behind the bathtub, sprouting out of little pots. But as her parents' candy cane farm grew and grew, things changed. They needed to expand the business and to move to a place with a little more property. "Your parents own a candy cane farm?" asked Evan, puzzled. "I thought those died out ages ago." "Last I'd heard, candy canes were just made from sugar and cornstarch and food dye and stuff." Chrissy laughed. "Most candy canes are these days. But Candy Cane Falls is a small town, and people do these things the slow way here. So they may be old-fashioned, celebrating Christmas all month and growing their own candy canes, but, well, God love 'em, and I hate to admit it, but my parents were always right about one thing. They taste better than the store-bought stuff." "Can there really be that much of a difference in the flavor of a candy cane?" Evan asked. "They seem pretty straightforward." She laughed again. What a dumb boy she was dealing with. Okay, she said. Here's what I want you to do. Close your eyes and imagine the flavor of a candy cane in your mouth. Are you imagining it? Evan closed his eyes. Mm-hmm, he said. Okay, now imagine that flavor, but like way better. Like way better. Now open your eyes. Evan opened his eyes. Whoa, he said. Pretty amazing, right? She asked. That's the difference between homegrown and factory-made candy canes. Speaking of, she said, gesturing towards the house, that's probably my cue to leave. Thanks for the ride, and if you're ever in the city and want someone to hustle and bustle with, look me up. I live in a harsh, minimalist apartment that's primarily constructed of sharp corners. It's for women who don't want children. Anyway, she said, waving her hand, I'm rambling. I must be going crazy for missing business so much. Thanks again for the ride. I had a nice time. Then she paused and looked back at him. She actually had a nice time. She couldn't even remember the last time she'd felt so relaxed. It was probably nothing, and she felt silly even thinking about it, but did she like this guy? They'd been cooped up in this car for hours, and not once had he made a joke about how, since they were stuck in the car, they were actually cooped up, which for some reason was a pun that Chrissy was certain he would make, one that would have been made worse by the fact that Evan's Prius wasn't even a coupe. It was unlikely, yes, but she had been hurt by men and their terrible puns before. It wasn't just that, though. She also liked that he was nice. She talked easily with him. He kept his hands on the wheel at 10 and 2 the whole time, but not in a way where it seemed like he thought he was better than you, just where you knew it came naturally to him. And he was funny, too. After she had told him about a TED Talk she had recently heard, the power posing one, obviously, she asked him what, if he were absolutely forced to give a TED Talk, he would speak about. He paused for a moment and then replied, the origins and iterations of the name Theodore. It had taken until now, outside her home, for Chrissy to get the joke, and she laughed out loud. She appreciated delayed gratification. It reminded her of her favorite TED Talk, the one about the marshmallow test. And most importantly, for all the radio and podcasts they listened to during their drive, not once did Evan say, you know, a couple of my buddies and I are actually thinking of starting a podcast. She'd literally never met a man like him before. Could this be fate, she wondered? Could this even be love? Should Chrissy try to go for it with Evan or say goodbye? Let's do it. Wait, she said, taking her hand off the car door handle and turning to face him. There's something I need to say. Evan gripped and ungripped the steering wheel. Chrissy took a deep breath and looked him in the eyes. How did that saying in business go? You have to spend money to make money. Maybe, she thought. In matters of the heart, you had to spend love to make love. Nope, do not say that out loud, she immediately thought in horror. This is going to sound ridiculous, she said at last, but do you want to run away together? Yes, Evan said immediately before she had even finished asking. Yes, 100% yes. He had actually initially answered yes when he thought she was asking, do you want to run, because he was starting to feel a little cooped up and thought it'd be nice to give his legs a stretch, but when he heard her full question, his heart leapt. He thought, maybe it's time I give my heart a stretch. No, do not say that out loud, he immediately thought in horror. Then he thought, oh wait, more like cooped up. Then he thought, ew, gross, never say that out loud. Then, internally rolling his eyes, he realized that, since he drove a Prius sedan, the joke wouldn't have even worked on a basic level. Be better, Evan thought himself angrily. Oh, I know, he cried suddenly, reaching over to open his glove compartment. Something had just occurred to him. He fished around for a bit and found what he was looking for, a mistletoe-scented car freshener. Chrissy cocked her head. Pine is more common, Evan explained, holding up the miniature tree above their heads. But I always thought mistletoe scent might come in handy if I ever met. Chrissy kissed him before he had time to finish the sentence. Want to get out of here? Evan asked, revving the engine, which, as he drove a Prius, did not quite have the effect he was going for. Yeah, Chrissy said, smiling. Let's go. Evan backed the car out of the driveway and pulled back onto the road. Chrissy glanced up at the rearview mirror. Huh, she said, squinting. I know that's my mom in the porch. She's the one waving her hands and yelling for us to come back, but I can't quite make out who's next to her. But by his general shape and silhouette, I want to say it's someone I knew in high school who, over the years, has grown both physically and emotionally into the man I deserve. If only we could both, over the course of the time we would have spent together in Candy Cane Falls, have found a way to get over our differences and love each other. She stared into the mirror a few seconds longer. Could also be the mailman, she said. Evan's car sped away down the long country roads until Chrissy's house was just a speck on the horizon. She sat back against the passenger seat and sighed contentedly. It would be just hours before it crossed her mind that maybe she should have asked him out for coffee. Just like, started small. But she wasn't thinking about that right now. Right now she was watching the mistletoe air freshener swing around the rearview mirror and thinking she was so happy she could listen to a TED Talk about happiness. And also maybe a Dan Gilbert one. She grabbed Evan's hand and squeezed, and he squeezed back. Then suddenly they both fell silent. Somewhere, just in the distance, was the faint, delicate sound of tinkling bells. They looked at each other and grinned. "You hear that too, right?" said Chrissy. "Yeah," said Evan, and then he stopped to listen a little harder. "Actually, it sounds like Christmas Eve Sarajevo, 12:24. That's actually my favorite Christmas song," they both said at the same time. "Okay, worst Christmas song of all time," Chrissy said. "Go." "Little Saint Nick by the Beach Boys," Evan said immediately. "We know that Christmas comes each time of year," Chrissy exclaimed. "That's like the one main definite thing we know. The Gregorian calendar's been around since Pope Gregory the 13th introduced it in 1582, Brian Wilson," Evan shouted. "We don't need a musical reminder as well." "Yeah, Brian Wilson," said Chrissy, laughing. "Do you think we'd be confused because we're, like, still relying on the Julian calendar or something?" "Yeah, sure, let's use the Julian calendar," said no one ever, Evan cried, practically in tears from laughter. "No one who cares about a little something called equinox drift, that is," Chrissy giggled. They spent the rest of the car drive talking about the history of calendars, the influence of the papacy, and why they suspected that Brian Wilson, a Californian, genius though he may be, might have been too warm to write a good Christmas song. It was, they both would think to themselves later, the best car ride either of them had ever been on. And Evan had once won $4,200 on Cash Cab. The end. So, as you can see, that is one of many potential endings in this book. This is my first time reading this, and I am living for it. Can I say that? Like, unironically. I'm really enjoying it. So if this is something you want to get as well and enjoy some more rom-coms, I'll link it below by Rhian Kunk. Maybe I'll do another reading, like another potential ending if people really want to. But I think you might enjoy it yourself. It's so fun. And I also wanted to say that this isn't me saying I'm done with YouTube or that I don't want to make other videos for the rest of the year until Christmas. But that I think that without the time constraints, I'll do better to make other videos in the meantime, including other romantic comedies, other Jane Austen content, or content about mental health, or what it was like being a transfer student, or whatever. I have a lot of ideas and potential thoughts about what I want to do in this new year. I just started my YouTube channel. It's, everything. I made my first video like back in April or something, and took a break because I ended up doing an internship, and then came back in the fall, and I've just been going for it since then. And if you have any ideas of something you'd like to talk about, or more of a certain kind of content that I've done so far, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I hope that you've had a great Christmas and holiday season, and I hope the new year brings exactly what we all want it to bring, including handsome men who can talk about the Gregorian calendar with you as you drive off into the sunset. This is brilliant. And yeah, and thanks, Caitlin. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed this time with you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing what 2020 brings for us all.
Christmas comes this time each year.